internet is like exploring a new frontier. It's an endless wilderness of information and entertainment. You can move from subject to subject, even from country to country, as easily as clicking on the mouse on your computer. But like any explorer, you'll need some skills and some tools to survive. That's what this series is all about. I'm Shelli Meyers. Even if you know nothing about the internet right now, during the course of these 3 tapes, you'll learn enough to begin the most exciting part of all, discovering the internet for yourself. On this first tape, we begin with the first step, getting wired, getting yourself hooked up to the internet. You'll learn what the internet is, what hardware is required, ways of gaining access to the internet, how to choose an internet service provider, and how to install and use internet software. The internet is a vast computer network. Really, it's a collection of computer networks that connects tens of millions of people worldwide. Traditionally, the internet's provided communication services such as electronic mail, but now we have access to a wealth of exciting new online information services. To give you a few examples, we can get up-to-date news reports, weather. Here on this site, I can find out ski reports and weather around the world, also hourly weather reports from around the nation. Here's an overview of national weather, and I can zoom in on any city to find out more information. There's also a lot of electronic publications online. This is Sunset Magazine, which is a regional magazine about gardening in the western part of the United States. I can also shop for things right online. This is a place that hosts many different vendors that sell products and goods online. I can even look at different bouquets and send one to someone right from my own computer. You'll also find movie reviews, stock quotes, free software, basically anything you can think of you'd be able to find on the internet. The internet isn't owned or run by any one particular person or organization, but comprises everything from large corporate networks to individual home computer users. Almost all the developed countries in the world now have some connectivity, and the internet's growing faster than anyone can keep track of. Believe it or not, the internet's been around for over 20 years, but it's mostly been just the academic and research communities that have used the internet. Only in recent years has there been developments in technology and policy that's made the internet more accessible to more people. So what is the internet? It's a network of computer networks. It's not owned or run by any one particular organization, and it offers an incredible range of information and entertainment. Now that you have an idea what the internet is, let me explain what hardware you'll need to get connected. There are 3 pieces of hardware that you'll need to get connected to the internet: a computer, a modem, and a phone line. For your computer, you'll need to have graphical capabilities. For an IBM PC or compatible, this means at least VGA support. You'll also have to have the ability to run Windows. For your modem speeds are measured in kilobits per second. You'll want to have at least a 14.4 kilobits per second modem. Modems also come in 28.8 kilobits per second, and this will give you much better speed. Your phone line can be your regular voice line that you have at home. There's no need to dedicate a voice line specifically for your modem. So remember, the hardware you're going to need is a computer, a modem, and a phone line. Once you have the required hardware, you'll need to know about the different ways of gaining access to the internet. Many people have access to the internet through work or school. For people who don't, there are 2 other options. The first way is through one of the large private online services, such as America Online, Prodigy, CompuServe, and Microsoft Network. Each of these offer their own suite of private services, such as private online discussion groups, exclusive publications, and shopping, but all of them provide at least some degree of connectivity with the internet. There are a few benefits of going with one of these online private providers. First, the installation tends to be very quick and easy. It's usually just a matter of putting a floppy disk in and double-clicking on an icon. The interface tends to be very friendly, and navigation is simple and graphical. There's also a wealth of services that you won't find anywhere else, not even on the internet. There are a few drawbacks. Can be expensive, and they may not offer full internet connectivity. For instance, you may have access only to electronic mail, but not World Wide Web, or you may have access only to some discussion groups and not others. They may also charge for internet access. Your internet access through one of these providers may be slow. Because they're not fully integrated with the internet, it can be like translating from a foreign language. And their technical support for internet services may be lacking. The second way to gain access to the internet is through a company called an internet service provider. A few of these, such as Netcom, are national and serve the entire country, but most of them are regional, so they serve only a particular area code or section of the country. The benefits to going with an internet service provider are that, first of all, it's very inexpensive. You can expect to pay between $1 and $3 an hour. You'll get full connectivity to the global internet, not just partial connectivity. There are a few drawbacks, though. The installation can be more complicated. There may be a number of different software pieces that you'll need to install manually, and we'll go through that a little bit later. The interface and navigation tools for the internet are still being developed, so sometimes getting around is not as easy as you might like. If you decide to go with an internet service provider, rather than with one of the private online services, there are a number of questions that you should ask. So next, we're going to look at choosing an internet service provider. The technical features of an internet connection are basically the same, but there are a number of reasons why you would choose one internet service provider over another. An internet service provider will sell you what's called a dial-up account. This is basically a subscription for internet service. You're generally charged on the basis of how many hours of connect time you use each month. There's also a type of provider called a flat rate provider. They'll charge you the same amount each month regardless of how many hours you use. The first thing you want to check when selecting an internet service provider is, are they in your local dialing area? When you're dialing up with your modem, you don't want to have toll charges on top of your usual hourly rate. The second thing you want to ask is, do they support dial-up IP? This is either SLIP or PPP. I'll explain in detail later what each of these mean, but you do want to make sure that your internet service provider supports dial-up IP. The next thing you want to do is compare price. The business of internet service providing is really competitive these days. There are probably thousands of providers in the US alone. And so if you shop around, you'll be able to get a very low price. You'll also want to find out what their technical support policies are. When you're installing internet software, you want to make sure that there'll be someone there that can walk you through it if you need it. So find out what their hours of operation are, whether you can get technical support on the phone or through email. Next, you want to find out what modem speeds that your internet service provider supports. If you go out and buy a 28.8 kilobits per second modem and your service provider only supports up to 14.4 kilobits per second, then you're not going to get as good a speed as your modem supports. Next, you want to find out the number of lines that your internet service provider has on their end. If they only have 16 lines and you're the 17th caller, you'll get a busy signal, which is very frustrating. This tends to be a problem more with flat rate providers. And last, you want to find out what your internet service provider's connection to the internet is. There's different speeds that service providers are connected at. T1 and T3 are very high speeds and will ensure that your speed at home is as fast as it possibly can be. So let's take a minute to review what questions you should ask an internet service provider. First, are they in your local dialing area? Second, do they support dial-up IP? This is either SLIP or PPP. Third, how does their price compare to other providers in the area? Fourth, what are their technical support policies? Fifth, what modem speeds do they support? Sixth, how many phone lines do they have incoming? And last, what is the internet service provider's connection to the internet speed at? Once you've decided on an internet service provider, you'll need to install networking software on your system in order to use the internet. Often, Your internet service provider will give you some or all of the software that you'll need to get connected, but in some cases you may need to manually install each piece yourself. Now, if you decide to go with one of the private online services, you'll get everything that you need and you'll probably be able to install it in just one step. First, the most important component that you'll need are the internet protocols. When we talk about protocols in the computer networking world, we're referring to a common networking language which allows all the computers on a network to communicate with each other. To give you an example, you understand me because I'm speaking English and you understand English. We could say that English is the protocol that allows us to communicate. So the internet protocols are the language of the internet, and they have the name TCP/IP. Now, TCP/IP expects that the computers on a network will have a physical connection to each other, but millions of people are connecting via phone line. So what allows this to happen is an additional piece of software or an additional protocol that runs over TCP/IP and allows TCP/IP to happen over your phone line. So this additional piece of software is called SLIP or PPP. Now, SLIP and PPP do exactly the same thing, so you only need one or the other of them. Often, SLIP or PPP functionality is built into the TCP/IP package you'll use. Now, there's a variety of TCP/IP packages available for personal computers. In Windows 95, the Internet protocols are already built into the operating system, but some configuration is required. We're going to go through that now. With the Windows 95 CD-ROM in the CD-ROM drive, choose Start from the lower left-hand corner. Under Settings, choose Control Panel. Double-click on the network icon, and the configuration for the network window will come up. The first thing we need to do is add a networking component. So click on Add, and first select Adapter. This network adapter is the hardware device that will connect you to the network, in your case, a modem. Click on Add, and from the menu on the left, select Microsoft. And double-click on Dial-Up Adapter on the right. This will add a number of different network components, not all of them you'll ever use, but they're there. Next, we have to add something else, so click on Add again. And this time we'll be adding a protocol. Again, choose Microsoft from the left-hand window, and this time from the right-hand window, select TCP/IP. And you can double-click on that, and it will be added. Now we have to do a little bit of configuration with the TCP/IP. So select TCP/IP and click on Properties. Now, there's a lot of information here, and most of it you'll have to get from your internet service provider. For instance, whether or not you obtain an IP address automatically or specify an IP address is information that you will get from your provider. DNS configuration is probably going to be enabled, but again, each of these components you'll have to get from your internet service provider. When everything's configured, click on OK, and the software will then be copied off the CD-ROM onto your disk. After the networking software finishes loading from the CD-ROM, you'll be prompted to reboot your system. So go ahead and click Yes and let your system reboot. After it comes back up, there's one other piece of configuration that we need to do. First, go to the Start menu in the lower left-hand corner. This time we're going to Programs, all the way up to Accessories, and select Dial-Up Networking. Here we'll be making a new connection for your internet service provider, so double-click on Make New Connection. The first thing we'll do is enter into this field the name of our internet service provider. Here we have an option to configure the modem that's connected to our system. If you have more than one modem, connected to your system, there'll be a menu and you can select which modem it is you want to use. If you click on Configure, there's some options you may need to configure for your modem. For instance, the communications port and the speed that your modem is going to connect at. If you're using a 28.8 kilobits per second modem, you'll want to connect at 57,600. If you're using a 14.4 kilobits per second modem, you'll want to connect at 38,400. Under the Connection tab, there's some connection preferences such as data bits, parity, and stop bits. 8 data bits, no parity, and 1 stop bit is very standard and is used by a lot of internet service providers, but you'll have to get the final word on what these settings should be from your internet service provider. Under the Options tab, you may need to click on Bring Up Terminal Window after dialing. Again, this is information you'll get from your provider. When all the configuration from your modem is done, click on OK. Back in the Make a New Connection window, click on Next to continue with the configuration. Here you'll type the telephone number of your internet service provider, and again click on Next. When all of the configuration is completed and correct, click on Finish. Now you have a new icon for your internet service provider. When we double-click on this, it brings up a connection box. Now, there are tools available that make the entire process of dialing the phone automated, and those are available from your internet service provider. What we're going to do today is go through the whole procedure manually so you can see what steps are involved. Here on the Dial Properties button, you can configure options that involve your telephone service. So for instance, if you have call waiting, you can indicate that and enter the code that would disable it. On some lines, you need to enter a code to get an outside line or to be able to make a long-distance call. There's also places that you can enter that. When these configurations are correct, you can just click on OK. Click on Connect to actually start dialing the phone. You'll be able to hear the phone dialing, and you'll hear the modem connect to your internet service provider. Sometimes there's a little bit of negotiation that needs to take place between your modem and the internet service provider, and it can take a minute to connect. Now here we're going through the manual login process, and I have this terminal screen in the upper left-hand corner. And here I need to type my username and password as was assigned to me by my internet service provider. My username or login name is given to identify me uniquely on the system, and my password is to prevent unauthorized use of my account. Now after that, I'm getting a bunch of garbled characters on my screen, but I know from my internet service provider that all I need to do now to get connected is click Continue. The first thing that's happening is that my username and password are being verified by my internet service provider to make sure that I actually have authorization to connect. Finally, when I'm connected, I'll get the connected message. It will tell me what connection speed I'm connected at, and this duration clock will run as long as I'm connected. After I'm connected, I can run internet applications. My TCP/IP is now running. I've got SLIP and PPP going so that TCP/IP can run over the phone line, and now I'm ready to actually run internet applications. When you're finished using internet applications, you'll want to be sure to go back to your connection status box and click on Disconnect. This will ensure that you're not charged for time by your internet service provider that you're not using. These built-in networking capabilities are new to Windows 95. If you have a previous version of Windows, you'll need to get a TCP/IP package from another source. A very popular one is a package called Trumpet WinSock. Trumpet WinSock is shareware, which means you can install it on your system at no cost and only send payment later if you plan to use it after a certain trial period, which is usually about 30 days. The heart of Trumpet WinSock is an application called TCP/Man. To launch TCP/Man, simply double-click on the icon. Trumpet WinSock uses an automated process of dialing procedures, basically provides the same exact functionality as the Windows 95 installation process that we just went through. So to recap, if you're using Windows 95, all of the TCP/IP networking software that you need is already installed as part of the operating system. You'll just need to do some configuration with the help of your internet service provider. If you're using a previous version of Windows, you'll need to get a TCP/IP package from another source. A very popular one is Trumpet WinSock, and this is shareware that a lot of internet service providers actually recommend. If you're using a Macintosh, the TCP/IP protocols come in an extension called MacTCP. MacTCP comes with System 7.5 and is available for previous versions. If you're running System 7.5.2 or later, MacTCP has been replaced with an extension called OpenTransport, which provides the same functionality. Now, MacTCP only provides the underlying TCP/IP protocols, not the SLIP or PPP functionality that you also need. So you'll need to get one of those packages separately. Packages such as InterSLIP or MacPPP are available from your provider and will give you the SLIP and PPP functionality. MacTCP, however, is a commercial product which has to be purchased from Apple Computer. Or you can often find a diskette that contains MacTCP included with one of the introductory internet books that you can find at your bookstore. So remember, if you're on a Macintosh, you'll need MacTCP as well as a SLIP or PPP package, such as InterSLIP or MacPPP. There's a lot to learn about the internet, and after completing this video series, you may want to learn more. One way is to check out one of the 200 or so books that have been published about the internet in recent years. Most bookstores carry a very large selection. And the best way to find one that works for you is to just pick up a few, read the back cover, skim through it, and see what really appeals to your method of learning. But to tell you the truth, one of the best sources of information about the internet is on the internet itself. After you complete Tape 2 and learn how to use a program called Netscape, you'll have access to some very interesting sources of information about the internet. Here we have a guide called Easy Internet from Net Magazine. This provides detailed information on many different topics about the internet, including hooking up a variety of different personal computers. Here's something called Internet Tour. It allows you to tour some of the really interesting and innovative sites that are on the internet. For instance, how to keep up with the stock market. And here's another site that provides an index to over 200 sites around the internet that provide information on how to use the internet. Some of what you've learned on this tape may have seemed complicated. If you feel like you need clarification, please rewind and watch parts of it again. Getting wired into the internet may take a little bit of effort, but once you're hooked up, you're in for an extraordinary adventure. And that's where our next presentation begins, surfing the web and other information services. Once you're wired into the internet, the next step is to get a feel for what's out there by surfing the World Wide Web and other information services. And it's easy. My name is Shelli Meyers. On this tape you'll learn what the World Wide Web is, what a browser is and how it functions, how to navigate the web, and what's involved in publishing on the web. This lesson assumes that you already have access to the internet or that you know how to get access. One of the most important uses of the internet is finding and retrieving useful, interesting, and entertaining information. For instance, you can find product information. Hewlett-Packard to small t-shirt companies publish all sorts of information about all of their products. You can find travel information. There are many different divisions of tourism around the world that put all sorts of information up about their country or locality. You can find newspapers, catalogs, movie reviews, you name it. The internet's been around for over 20 years, but the explosive growth that's caused so much media attention has only been in the last few years. It's the World Wide Web that's been one of the prime factors contributing to that growth. The World Wide Web, or just the Web for short, was developed at CERN, the European Center for Particle Physics in Switzerland. The web is a new way of sharing all kinds of information on the internet, not just text, but also graphics, audio, and even video. Navigating the internet used to be difficult and pretty cryptic, but the web allows us to get around the internet much more easily and comfortably. How do we do that? By using something called a browser. Browsers are the applications used to navigate the World Wide Web. A good analogy is to think of the telephone system. You can think of the conversations that are happening out on the wires as the World Wide Web, and you can think of the browsers as your telephone set to connect into those conversations. Browsers are very powerful tools because they access not only World Wide Web information, but other types of internet information as well. There are many World Wide Web browsers available. Today, we'll be demonstrating the very popular Netscape Navigator. So now we're ready to start navigating the web using Netscape. It's important to remember that Netscape is just an application, like Word or Excel are applications, and you'll probably need to install it manually on your system. But the installation is pretty straightforward. In order to launch Netscape, simply double-click on the Netscape icon. We're looking at Netscape here under Windows 95, but the appearance under previous versions of Windows or under the Macintosh would be virtually identical. The default display of Netscape includes this menu bar at the top, this toolbar of buttons, a location indicator, another row of buttons called the directory buttons, and down at the bottom, a status indicator bar. You also have your scroll bars and resize tool, as you do with any Windows application. What we're looking at is a very typical World Wide Web document, or what we call a page. A collection of pages from one company or organization is referred to as a World Wide Web site. So here, we're looking at the top-level page of Netscape Communications Corporation. The top-level page of a site is also referred to as the site's home page. As you can see, this page contains a combination of graphics and text, and we can scroll through and look at more of it. Now, you'll notice that some of the text is highlighted, which indicates that you can simply click on this word or phrase, and it will jump to a page related to those keywords. Highlighted words and phrases, or graphics can also be highlighted, are called links. And this is because they link to other information. So for instance, this highlighted phrase, Internet Headlines, is a link to related information. If I click on it, that page immediately appears, and I can read about some of the Internet headlines. This whole mechanism of linking information in this way is called hypertext or hypermedia. Most of the time, this linked information resides on another computer, somewhere else on the internet, possibly even on the other side of the world. As you can see, when I move the cursor around the screen, the pointer will change to a little hand when I'm over one of these hypertext links. The location indicator bar down at the bottom tells me what the address is of the World Wide Web information that this is linking to. The World Wide Web address of the page that I'm currently on is always up here in this location indicator bar. World Wide Web addresses or location information may look a little funny to you. The syntax of a website's location is called a URL, which stands for Uniform Resource Locator. URLs begin with the type of resource. So in the case of the World Wide Web, all World Wide Web addresses look like this: http://. After that, you'll have the address of the internet site on which the information is actually residing. And after that, you may have some additional information about the directory and file name. Now, in your travels across the World Wide Web, you may run into URLs that don't have HTTP at the very beginning, but some other letters here, such as FTP or Gopher. And what this refers to is information stored in other formats, not necessarily specific to the World Wide Web. The nice thing is that browsers such as Netscape can also access information in these other formats. So now let's take a look at the toolbar buttons. The first button here is the back button. And when I click on that, I go back to the previous page I was viewing. The forward button is next. And when I click on that, I go forward to the next page. Now, each time I start up Netscape, there's a particular page that will be displayed by default. When I go to the Home button, which is the next button on the toolbar, and click on that, I'm always returned back to this original page. This is called My Home page, and the Home button will always return me there no matter how far out on the web I've ventured. Next we have the Reload button. What the Reload button does is actually goes back out over the web and reloads the page over the net. The page that I'm looking at then is redisplayed. This is most useful when you're developing your own World Wide Web pages, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Next we have the Load Images button. And where this comes in handy, I'm going to have to take a minute here to go under the Options menu, which I'll discuss in more detail in a moment. But you'll see there's an option here, Auto Load Images. If I click on that, you'll see that there's no check mark next to it, which means that Auto Load Images is turned off. What this means is that when I display a page that includes graphics and text like this, the images won't automatically be displayed. There actually will just be a little icon that says there's an image there, but I won't see this image. Now, why would I want to do this? If I'm on a very slow modem, for instance, 9600 baud, it will be very slow for me to download all these large images. This is because graphics are much larger and take a longer time to download than text. So turning off Auto Load Images is a way for me to speed up my connection. Then, however, if I do want to actually go ahead and see the image, I can select the Load Images button, and it will go ahead and download all the images on that page. For the purpose of this demonstration, though, we are going to look at all the images, so I'm going to turn back on Auto Load Images. The next button we have is the Open button. Oftentimes, you'll see a URL in a printed advertisement, or someone will tell you about a World Wide Web site that you might want to take a look at, and they'll specify the URL. So in order to open a specific URL, click on the Open button. Then type in the name of the URL that you want to open into the field, and click on Open. You'll then jump directly to that page, in this case, Alamo Rent-A-Car's page. The next button is the Print button. When we click on that, you'll get your usual print dialog box, which will allow you to print the current page directly to your printer. Next, we have the Find button. And when you click on that, you can enter a keyword that you want to search for on the current page being viewed. So, for instance, Internet will find the next occurrence of the word Internet on this page and highlight it. I can click on Find Next again, and it will go to the next occurrence. Finally, we have the stop button. Sometimes you may wind up waiting a long time for a page to download, and you can just click on the stop button to abort the current transfer in progress. Now, you may have noticed that this link is now a different color than the other ones on this page. After we click on a particular link and then use the back button to return to the previous page, this link has now turned purple. The reason is that this is a web page we've already visited. We've already seen the information that this Internet Headlines link refers to. This is an easy way to keep track of sites on the web that we've already visited versus sites on the web that we haven't yet visited. Obviously, by just browsing around the web, it would be very difficult to accidentally stumble upon particular information that we might be looking for. There's so much available. How can we find specific information? Fortunately, there are many sites on the web that offer hierarchical subject directories of web pages organized by subject, often with some sort of keyword searching capabilities. Yahoo is one such site. We'll use the Open button to jump directly to Yahoo. I'm entering the URL of Yahoo. And here I am at the top page or home page of Yahoo. We can browse by subject to find something we might be interested in. If I click on entertainment, I find that there's a lot of subcategories underneath of entertainment, such as comics, and even more subdirectories under comics. In fact, here's 149 listings under comic strips. In fact, under Calvin and Hobbes, there's 7 different entries. And here's one page completely dedicated to the Calvin and Hobbes comic strip. This should give you some idea of how much is available on the web. There's another way to use Yahoo, and that's by entering a keyword search into the field here. For instance, if I want to find information on chocolate, I simply type chocolate into this field and click on the search button. As you can see, there are 52 matches in the Yahoo database that match the word chocolate. I can scroll down and look at these and find one that interests me and simply click on the link and it will jump directly to that page. Barbara Jean's Famous Candies is a store that exists in Massachusetts, but on the web it can exist everywhere. I can click on something in particular that I'm interested in, and here I can actually order the $25 chocolate basket right online. I enter my name, my method of payment, my credit card number, and where I want it shipped to, and it'll be sent to me in the mail. Many commercial sites on the web are beginning to offer online ordering. You can shop for products right online and then place your order by entering your credit card information in an online form. There are even online shopping malls where a variety of different vendors are represented. As online ordering becomes more prevalent, issues of security are becoming increasingly important. Consumers want to be assured that their credit card number is being sent over the internet securely and can't be intercepted and used fraudulently. So to this end, there are security measures that are being incorporated into World Wide Web software to try to assure that these online transactions are as safe as they possibly can be. So let's take a look now at the menu items. The first menu item is File, and under that, the first thing we have is New Window. This allows you to open a second Netscape window, which you can browse through separately. You might want to do this if you wanted to, for instance, view 2 pages side by side. When you're finished with the second window, you can simply close it. Next, we have Open Location, and this does exactly the same thing as the Open button on the toolbar. Next, we have Open File, and what this allows you to do is open a file on your local hard disk. This would come in handy if you were a World Wide Web developer creating your own pages. Next, we have Save As. Save As allows you to save the current page being viewed onto your hard disk. Now, I rarely do this because I find it's more useful to be able to go back and view the pages that I'm interested in right online. People who provide information on the World Wide Web tend to keep it very up to date. So if I save it on my hard disk, it becomes a static copy of something that might be updated in the future. There's an easier way to reference pages that you'd like to see again in the future, and that's called bookmarks, and I'll review that in a few minutes. Next, we have Mail Document. What this does is it brings up a window that allows me to mail a reference to this page to someone that I'd like to share it with. So for instance, if I wanted to show this web page to a friend of mine, I just enter his electronic mail address here, and in the text of the message is the URL of this web page. That way he can receive the electronic mail and take a look for himself. Next, under File, we have Document Info, which just tells us a little bit about the web page that we're looking at. Underneath of that, we have Print Functions that allows us to print. We can also print, remember, from the Print button in the toolbar. And finally, we have the Close and Exit functions that you'd find in any Windows program. The Edit menu is the standard Windows Edit menu. Under View, the first things we have are Reload and Load Images. And these do the same thing as the Reload button and the Load Images button here on the toolbar. Next we have Refresh. And Refresh is different from Reload in that it simply refreshes the screen. Reload goes out over the web and re-downloads the information off the internet. Refresh simply redraws the screen on our local computer. Sometimes this is useful just in case you've got another window that's been over top of your Netscape window. You've moved it away, and for some reason the Netscape window has gotten mangled or confused and isn't displaying correctly. You'd use Refresh to make sure that everything looks straight. Finally, under View, we have Source. This allows you to actually view the information that created the World Wide Web page that you're looking at. This can be very handy if you're a developer who's creating your own World Wide Web pages, and we'll talk about more what you're seeing here in the View Source window in just a few minutes. Next, we have the Go menu. The first three things, back, forward, and home, do exactly the same things as these first three buttons on the toolbar. We also have Stop Loading, which is the same as the Stop button on the toolbar. Underneath that, you'll see a number of different items here, and what these all refer to are web pages that I visited in the recent past of this session of Netscape. Sometimes you may have gone out surfing around the web and you discover a page that you really like and you'd like to go back and see it, except that you don't remember how you got there or what its URL was. If you go to the Go menu, you'll find all of the recent pages that you visited, and you can simply select one and it jumps immediately back to that page. There is a way to make more permanent references to pages that you might like to visit again, and that's called bookmarking. Bookmarks is the next menu. If I ever see a page that I'd like to get to again, I can simply click on Add Bookmark. You'll see now that my bookmark list has Barbara Jean's Famous Candies at the bottom. No matter how far off I venture onto the web, I can always immediately jump back to Barbara Jean's Famous Candies just by selecting it from this menu. Your bookmark list isn't temporary for just this session of Netscape, but lasts in between your sessions. So you can quit out of Netscape and a week later go back in, and your bookmark list will be intact. Next, we have the Options menu, and what this allows you to do is customize the behavior of Netscape. For instance, here I can turn off the toolbar, the location indicator, and the directory buttons, and I have more room than in the screen for my document. However, I actually like to use the scroll bar, the toolbar, the location indicator, and the directory button, so I'm going to turn them all back on. Under Preferences, there's a number of different tabs that modify the behavior of Netscape for you. For instance, you can modify your homepage location. Remember that your homepage is the page that is displayed each time you start up Netscape. You can also control the behavior of your fonts, the colors that are used, and there's a lot of other configuration things in here that you might want to change, but you'll need the help of your internet service provider. Here we have Directory. What this is a permanent bookmark list of things that you might want to look at that would help you get started in your exploration of the web. The most popular ones are referenced here in the directory buttons. For instance, the What's New page shows some of the newest World Wide Web sites that have been created in the last week. For instance, here's the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. I can click here and get some background information, and I jumped to there right through the What's New button. What's Cool represents some of the really innovative and interesting uses of the World Wide Web. For instance, here's CNN. They have a number of different things available online, up-to-the-minute news reports, business information, showbiz. Under Showbiz, we can find out information about movies, television, and music. Finally, we have the Help menu over on the far right. When you're interested in finding out how to use Netscape more effectively, or if you have a question, just go to the Help menu and pick the appropriate menu item. You're going to find what's really interesting is that all of the documentation for Netscape is available over the web. It's not just sitting on your hard disk somewhere, so the documentation is kept up to date. You can find out answers to questions about how to use the World Wide Web in general, how to use Netscape in particular, how to get technical support, how to give feedback on comments that you think might help Netscape become a better product, etc. So here are some tips to remember when navigating the web. Most importantly, you're going to need a browser, such as Netscape, which we've just been looking at now. Some great places to start exploring the web are the What's Cool and the What's New pages, and they're referenced again from the directory menu or the directory buttons. If, however, you're looking for specific information, use a subject index like Yahoo, which we also looked at. Now, I know not all of you are going to be content just to surf the web. Some of you will want to create your own web page. It's actually not as difficult as you might think. The web is the fastest growing part of the internet today, and as more and more websites are being created, there are several reasons why people or organizations might want to jump on the bandwagon and publish their own information on the web. First of all, as we've seen, one of the common uses of the web is for corporate information sites. Companies can use the web to provide timely information about their products, provide software updates, and other sorts of things. For example, here's the website of Microsoft Corporation. They have information about products, support, solutions and services, a way to give feedback, and a way to get help. You can also find nonprofit organizations on the web. It's very common for major universities to put a lot of information about their programs and classes on the web. Here at Boston University, student, faculty, and staff telephone directory is online, the catalogs of many of the schools and colleges within the university. They even have the Oxford English Dictionary online. Many people also have personal web pages they use for personal biographies. These are often called personal home pages. Now I'm going to show you mine, actually. I use my homepage to talk about what I've been doing recently, projects I've been involved in. Some of the things I've done are teaching, and I've been in the press, and I've included links to related information. For instance, here I've actually got a link to the newspaper article in which I appeared, and so what I've created is actually sort of an interactive online resume. The web is also used very extensively for software distribution. Here on this page, you can get many internet applications for the personal computer downloaded right to your hard disk. When you click on one of these links, you'll be presented with a dialog box to ask you what directory and file name you want to save into. A lot of programs that are available for downloading are compressed to save space. For instance, for Windows applications, you'll find that many files end in .zip or .zip. Zip is a compression format. Files that are compressed, after you download them, you'll need to uncompress them with the appropriate utility. For zip files, that utility is called pkunzip. As time goes on, more and more companies are finding really unusual and innovative ways to use the World Wide Web. This is Federal Express's homepage, and they actually have a way to track a package online. All you do is type in the number that you've been given when you send your package, click and send request, and it actually tells you that the package has been delivered, who it was signed for by, and traces the whole route of the package. Another useful website that I use an awful lot is the AT&T toll-free 800 number directory. I can simply type here in this field for the name of the company that I'm looking for, and what will happen is it will match everything in its database that matches what I typed into that search field. And here's the 800 number for Apple Computer. If you're interested in creating a website for yourself or your business or organization, there are a number of issues that you need to consider. First, check with your internet service provider to find out what charges will be incurred, if any. Some providers allow you to put up a personal homepage at no cost, but do charge for commercial web pages. Second, you'll recall that you can see how any given World Wide Web page was created by selecting View Source from the menu. So for instance, on my home page, here's the source that actually created this page. What you're seeing here is the language of the web. It's called HTML. That stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And basically, what it is a number of tags inserted in my text that dictate how the text will appear on the screen. So for instance, the H1 here indicates that Shelli Meyers should appear as a large header. HR for a horizontal rule, which is a horizontal line across the screen. This command changes the font size. And this command causes a paragraph break. Now you may think, oh dear, how am I going to learn how to write things in HTML because it looks very complicated. However, documentation for HTML is available right on the web. A really good starting point is the Beginner's Guide to HTML from the National Center for Supercomputing Applications at the University of Illinois. This is a complete HTML primer and will give you all the information you need to start authoring web pages yourself. There are also some related tools that allow you to convert documents in other formats, such as Microsoft Word or WordPerfect, into HTML. If you will be authoring for the web, remember that the most popular sites provide useful tools or information, as well as advertising. The World Wide Web is revolutionizing internet use. As you can tell from this demonstration, it's already useful and exciting, and will continue to become more so in the future. So remember, To create World Wide Web pages, you'll need to know HTML, the language of the web. All the documentation that you need is online and is actually pretty easy to learn. To make your website truly outstanding and popular, be sure to include useful or entertaining information, not just advertising. That's all you need to know to begin exploring the internet. And exploring is the right word. The net is enormous and it's spread all around the globe. New sites are being added literally every day. That makes it like an endless frontier you could explore forever. But just like in the real world, most people on the net find other people and other places that they really like. They exchange electronic mail and hang out in cyberspace together. That's what our next tape's about, communicating with electronic mail and Usenet discussion groups. The World Wide Web that we talked about in Tape 2 is the flashiest and possibly the most fun part of the internet. But the reason most people use the internet is to communicate directly with other people on the net. In this tape, we'll first explore electronic mail, the internet tool for corresponding with friends, colleagues, relatives, even complete strangers. Then we'll talk about Usenet, a collection of thousands of different electronic discussion groups known as newsgroups, where you can exchange thoughts and ideas with people of like minds around the world. Finally, we'll discuss how to communicate appropriately and effectively in this new medium. As in Tape 2, this lesson assumes that you already have access to the internet or know how to get access. On this tape, you'll learn the benefits of using electronic mail, how internet addressing works, how to send and receive electronic mail, what Usenet is and how it's structured, and how to read and post to newsgroups. Despite the growth and popularity of information services such as the web, electronic mail, or just email for short, is still by far the most widely used application on the internet. It's sort of like the telephone system. There are all sorts of neat automated services we can dial up with our phone. We could get stock quotes or find out where a movie's playing nearby, but what we primarily use our phone for is to talk to other people. Similarly, there's a wealth of information out there on the internet, as we saw in Tape 2, but it's still communication internet users are spending most of their time on. There's some definite benefits to using electronic mail over other forms of communication. First of all, it's fast. Email messages are usually delivered in a matter of minutes, and sometimes even in a matter of seconds. It's immediate. If you have a friend in Japan, you don't have to worry about time zone differences to send an electronic mail message. It helps with time management and organization. Email messages don't have to be answered immediately, unlike the telephone, and you can easily keep records of all your correspondence. And finally, it's free. Except in some rare cases, exchanging email doesn't cost the sender or the receiver a cent. The same certainly can't be said of long-distance phone calls. So to recap, the benefits of email are, it's fast, it's immediate, it helps with time management and organization, and it's free. Now that you know some of the benefits of using email, to be able to start sending messages, you'll need to know a little bit about internet addressing. Just as with the postal address, all you need to know to send an email message is its final destination address. How it gets there isn't actually important. That final destination address of an email message identifies your intended recipient as well as his or her location on the internet. We call this an email address, although you'll also hear it referred to as an internet address. Email addresses can look a bit complicated, but they all have the same general components. Let's take a look at a few sample ones so you can get an idea of how they work. This first address is actually my own email address. The part on the left-hand side of the @ sign, Sam, is the username that was assigned to me by my internet service provider and uniquely identifies me on that system. On the right of the @ sign, Indra.com is the internet address of my provider's computer system. You'll see that the components on the right side of the @ sign are separated by a period. The part on the far right, com, indicates that this is a commercial organization. In this address, jocelyn@harvard.edu, the edu to the far right indicates that this person's home on the internet is an educational organization. There are a few other three-letter endings you might see to email addresses. For instance, gov for government organizations, mil for military sites, and org for nonprofit organizations. Email addresses in countries other than the US, however, don't end in these three-letter codes identifying the type of organization, but instead end in two-letter codes that identify the country it's in. For instance, in this example, the NZ at the end indicates that this is an email address for someone in New Zealand. You'll also see that the internet address to the right of the @ sign can have 2, 3, or even 4 components, as in this address at Lab 37 in the Biosciences Department of MIT. The username part of an email address to the left of the @ sign can also have several different forms. For instance, here, Jacob Margolis' username is his full name, separated with an underscore, whereas my username, Sam, is simply my initials. So let's review the format of an email address one more time. To the left of the @ sign is the username of your intended recipient. That username is assigned to him or her by the internet service provider. To the right of the @ sign, you have the internet address of the system belonging to the internet service provider, and that can have several different components, all separated by a period. Now that you understand how internet addressing works, we'll learn how to send and receive email with a popular shareware program called Eudora. In order to send and receive email, a popular program many people use is called Eudora. Eudora is a shareware program. As I mentioned in tape 1, a shareware program is one that you can install on your computer and try out before you decide to purchase it. Although we'll be using Eudora today, there are literally dozens of other application programs to send and receive email. In order to use Eudora, first, be sure that you're connected to the internet. Then, launch Eudora by double-clicking on the icon. The first time you run Eudora, you'll need to do a few configuration steps. When you launch Eudora, this will appear, the settings window. And the first thing you'll need to enter is your POP account. Now this is information that you'll have to get from your internet service provider. It may be exactly the same as your email address, but it also may not be. You'll want to enter your real name. And under personal information, your return address. Your return address will be your actual email address. Under hosts, another required piece of information is this field here, SMTP. All of the other icons you see here under settings control the behavior of Eudora and are mostly just preferences. The only required fields that you need, we've already checked and done and dealt with, but you might want to check with your internet service provider because they're the final authority. When you're done with your settings, click on OK. The first thing you might want to do is send an electronic mail message to someone. The easiest way to find out someone's email address is simply to call them on the phone and ask them. So to compose a new message, under the message menu, select New Message. You can also do this with this button here, New Message. You'll be given this window, which allows you to specify the recipient. In the to line here, you'll put the email address of the person you want to send the message to. Here, you can enter a subject. This should be short and just a synopsis of what the message is about. Underneath this gray line, this will be the text of the message that you're going to send. When you're ready to send the message, just click on the Send button here. And you'll see a very quickly appearing and disappearing status box that indicates that your message has been sent. You can also send a message to more than one recipient at the same time. Simply list all of the email addresses on the same to line. You can separate with either a comma or a space. And again, a quick subject line. This CC line stands for carbon copy. I can send a carbon copy to someone else entirely. When these recipients receive this email message, they'll see that this person received a carbon copy. The BCC line stands for blind carbon copy. I can put someone on this line, and it will not appear to any of the recipients that this person also received a copy. Now, in all cases, you may not want to send the message. You may decide later that you don't really actually want to send it. You can cancel a message in progress simply by clicking on the X bar. The dialog box will come up and ask you if you want to save the changes. If you do say yes, this message can be edited later and then sent out. If you say no, it will be discarded. So I'm thinking that perhaps maybe later I will want to send this message, so I'm going to click on yes. Where this message goes is into another mailbox, my out mailbox. And you can see here that this still is available for me to edit if I want to send it later. I can minimize the out mailbox, and it will go down to the bottom of my Eudora window. Next, I'm going to send a message and attach a document to it. If I've been working on a document in Microsoft Word or something like that, I may want to attach a document to this message and send it to my recipient. Under the message menu, I'll pick Attach File. I'm then presented with a browser that I can select the document that I want to attach. And I'll just select this document and click OK. Now on the attachments line, I can see that this is the name of the document that's been attached to this message. And I'll click on Send, and that message is sent. Once I've started sending messages, I'll probably start to get some email in return. To check my email, I go under the File menu and select Check Mail. The first time I do this during a Eudora session, I'll be prompted for my password. Enter that, and it will not be echoed onto the screen. It will instead be replaced by asterisks. This is so that someone looking over your shoulder won't be able to see your password. And click on OK. The messages will be downloaded. I'll be informed that I have new mail. And all of my new mail is now here in this window, which is my In mailbox. To look at any one of these messages, I simply double-click. What I'm seeing in the header is who the message is from, who it was to, the subject, and the text of the message, which I can scroll through with the scroll bars on the right. I can minimize this message or dismiss it completely. I'm going to resize the inbox so that we can see all of the summary information. The bullet indicates that this is a new message. This is who the message is from, the time and date it was sent, the size of the message in kilobytes, and the one-line subject that the person sending it to me entered. If I'm finished looking at a message, I can click here on the trash button. And what this will do is delete this message. Now, as you can see, that message no longer appears here in my inbox. I can click on the next message and read it. And you can see now that I have a number of buttons up here that are no longer grayed out. For instance, this button is the reply button. If I click on this, it will automatically set up a reply to the message I was just reading. So it formats the to line for me. I don't have to do it myself. It puts in my name and email address on the from line. I don't have to put it in myself. And it includes the subject and puts a little RE in front of it. It actually will go ahead and quote the message that I'm replying to. And a common convention when using electronic mail is to start all of the quoted lines with the greater than sign. And then I can edit the parts out, for instance, that are not necessary. And this is polite to do rather than just include a whole long message that the sender's already seen. And I can respond. And send the message or cancel it. You now know enough to send, receive, and reply to email messages. Eudora is a very full-featured program that allows a lot of customization and flexibility. As you can see here from the menus, there are many, many features that allow you to manage your incoming mail, create shortcuts for yourself, and get help. The Eudora documentation is in a Microsoft Word document that's over 100 pages. But don't be put off by that. You actually know everything that you need to get started. Now that you've learned how to exchange electronic mail with individuals and groups, you can now take it one step further and join entire online communities through Usenet discussion groups. Usenet is like a giant bulletin board system. There are thousands of individual discussion groups covering topics ranging from political debates to technical discussions to how to care for your pet turtle or where to find a roommate. Historically, Usenet has been called Usenet News, and the individual discussion groups, news groups. This is something of a misnomer, though, since few groups carry what we traditionally think of as news. There are many different Usenet applications. Netscape, which we used in Tape 2 to navigate the World Wide Web, we're now going to use to access Usenet groups. Netscape, which is a program usually used to navigate the World Wide Web, is so powerful and flexible that it could also be used to access Usenet. First, establish your connection to the internet. Then, launch Netscape Navigator. When Netscape comes up, you'll have your usual home page as if you were going to browse the World Wide Web. There's a few pieces of configuration that you need to do first before you're ready to start looking at Usenet groups. Go under Options and select Preferences. Under the Mail and News tab, there's several things here that you'll need to configure with the help of your internet service provider. Under Mail SMTP server, you'll need to enter an address which you'll get from your internet service provider. Under your name, enter your real name. Under your email, enter your email address. Down at the bottom, under the News section, where it says News NMTP server, you'll need to get this address from your internet service provider as well. When you've made the necessary configuration changes, click on OK. Then go back to Under Options and select Save Options. Now you're ready to start looking at Usenet groups. You can do that by selecting the News Groups button, which is in the Directory Buttons bar, or by going to the Directory menu and selecting Go to Newsgroups. You'll be presented with this screen, and it'll say Subscribe Newsgroups with a little introduction, and a listing of the newsgroups that you're currently subscribed to. Now, subscribing doesn't mean that you have to pay for these groups, just that you've chosen to see only a set of them each time. You can subscribe and unsubscribe to different groups whenever you want. So by default, these are the 3 groups that you are subscribed to. And all of the Usenet groups have this format. Something on the left, which is the most general topic, a period, a subtopic, and possibly additional periods with additional subtopics. So this is a hierarchical naming scheme where news is at a top level. Underneath of that we have announce, and then we've got even more subtopics under that. This one in particular is new users. Now you've got the same hypertext capability that you had when browsing the World Wide Web under Netscape. And to refresh your memory, that means that this is a link that I can simply click on, and additional information will be brought up to me. So if I'm interested in finding out what the articles are in news.announce.newusers, I simply click on it, and I'm immediately brought into this group. Now each individual posting or article is listed separately with a bullet, and I can scroll through and click on a particular article that I'm interested in. Answers to frequently asked questions about Usenet seems like it would be very useful. So I'll click on that, and this individual article or posting is displayed for me. What I'm seeing at the top is the subject, the date, the internet address of the person who sent it, and any other news groups that this article might have been posted to. I can scroll down and read this whole article. I can use the buttons up in the toolbar just as I could when browsing the World Wide Web. So I'll use the back button to go back to the previous screen. And again, you'll see that this has changed to purple from blue, indicating that I've already read this article. This way I can keep track of what I've seen already and what I haven't seen. Up at the top, there are a number of different button bars. And I'll review each of these in detail in a few minutes. I'm going to now look at another news group called news.newusers.questions. This number in front of each news group indicates how many articles are in each of these news groups. News.announce.newusers is what's called a moderated news group. This means that you can't just post things whenever you want. It goes through a moderator or a person who decides what is posted and what's not posted. News.newusers.questions, however, with many more articles, can be posted to by anyone at all that has access. So here's a news group where we find lots of questions from new users of Usenet and the internet in general. Here's an interesting article, Free Internet Beginners Newsletter. Now underneath of that, looks a little bit different than what we've seen. There's an indentation and additional things underneath of the title of this article. And what this is called is a thread. And what a thread means is that replies to this original article are attached underneath of it so that I can view all the replies and everything relating to this topic all at once, rather than by chronological order, in which case I might not see them all together. So here's the original article. And here's another article that relates to it. If there's a particular group that I'm not interested in seeing, I can select it and click on unsubscribe, and it won't be displayed. If there's the name of a particular group that I know that I want to see, I can simply type it here in this field. And that appears in my subscribe to list. Now, of course, there's many thousands, as I mentioned, of news groups. How do I know which one to type in and subscribe to? A very easy way to find out all of the news groups that are available to you is with this button, View All News Groups. When I click on that, a dialog box appears that tells me that Netscape has to save a copy of the news group list. Now, because there are around 11,000 or so news groups, this is going to take a few minutes to download. However, you only have to do it once, so click on OK, and that download will start to take place. Once the names of the different news groups are loaded to your system, we'll finally have access to many hundreds of Usenet groups. If your internet service provider carries all of them, you'll actually have access to thousands of groups. So after all of the groups are finished loading, here's what you'll see. This news group list lists all of the news groups that you have access to in hierarchical fashion. Everything that you see with an asterisk after it means that more news groups follow underneath. And the little icon here sort of looks like a stack of newspapers. A single newspaper next to a group that has no asterisk indicates that this is a single news group. The checkbox allows me to subscribe or unsubscribe to any particular group. This particular hierarchy of news groups, comp, indicates that this is a section of news groups all dedicated to computing. If we click on that, we'll see all of the news groups that are underneath of comp. So for instance, here's a single news group about the policy of computer administration. This stack of newspapers, which indicates that this is one hierarchy of many more news groups underneath of it, because of the asterisk, is about artificial intelligence. And as you can see, there are many groups dedicated to computing issues. Here's a whole hierarchy about the internet. There's two different news groups underneath of this. And if I want to subscribe to one, for instance, comp.internet.net happenings, I can click here, check the box, and then click on subscribe to news groups. It'll take me back to my subscribe to news groups page, and now you'll see that that group has been added to my list. Remember that every time I click on the news groups button, I'm returned back to this page, and all of my subscribed news groups are here. I'm going to go back to view all news groups and show you a few other of the hierarchies that you might find. Rec is an entire hierarchy dedicated to recreational issues. Sci for scientific issues, and Soc for social issues. And as you can see, under the recreational hierarchy, you'll find things from arts and aviation to collecting, all sorts of things. Now, I collect stamps, so I may want to see a Usenet group completely dedicated to stamp collecting. Now, I can view any group that I want to without subscribing to it, but because I'll want to visit this news group again, I'm going to click on it and subscribe. It's now added to my subscribe to newsgroup list. Now, we've already reviewed how to look at individual articles, and that articles are grouped by thread. That means follow-up articles that are related to the original are noted by an indentation underneath the original. This is a lot more convenient, I think, than reading them by date. Now I'm going to describe what each of these buttons do along the top. This exact same row of buttons also appears at the very bottom of the list of articles. If I want to post an article to this news group, I use the Post New Article button. Here, the Post News Group field reminds me of which news group it is that I'm posting to. I can type in a subject, and down here in the main window, I can type the text of the message that I want to post. Now, when I send an article with the send button, it's going to post to this news group, and potentially millions of people might read this. So I want to be very sure that it is what I want to send. Right now, I'm just doing this for the purposes of demonstration, so I'm going to click on Cancel. It will ask me to verify that I want to discard this message. The next button is Catch Up All Articles. When I click on this button, what happens is that all the articles in this group are marked as red. So when I click, I'm returned back to my subscribed newsgroup list. And as you can see, this group, rec.collecting.stamps, now says it has 0 articles in it. When I return back in, no articles appear. So this is a way to allow me to just catch up with everything that's going on, and I can start with new articles coming in. If I do want to go ahead and see again the articles that I've already marked as red, I can click on Show Red Articles, and all of these articles reappear. This is a toggle button, which means that it turns it on or off. Before, when I clicked on it, it said Show Red Articles, but now it says Hide Red Articles. If I click again, it's like turning a light switch. It'll go back to hiding all of the red articles. With this button, Unsubscribe, I can immediately unsubscribe to the news group, and it no longer appears in my Subscribe to Newsgroup list. And finally, the last button, Subscribe Newsgroups, immediately takes me back to my list of Subscribe to newsgroups. Now we'll take a look at your options with individual articles within a particular group. Here we're in the group rec.skiing.alpine. And as you'll recall, articles are grouped into threads. The original article has a bullet next to it, and follow-up articles are articles that people have posted in reply to the original article come underneath of it indented. So I'm clicking on an article, and as you can see, we have a whole new set of buttons up along the top. And again, this row of buttons is repeated at the bottom of the individual article as well. Each article has the subject, the date, the internet address, and sometimes real name of the person who sent it, their organization, and which group it's been posted to. Sometimes articles are posted to multiple groups. The buttons along the top allow us to navigate and take certain actions from here. This button allows us to go to the next article in this thread, that is, the next article relating to snowboardless resorts. I click on this and you can see the next article has the subject, snowboardless resorts, with the RE in front of it, indicating that it's referencing that original article. This button takes me back to the previous article in the thread. This button takes me up to the previous thread. So this topic is completely different. This button here will take me down to the next thread, snowboardless resorts. If I'm not interested at all in snowboardless resorts, I can use the next button, mark thread as red, to skip over this entire thread. This will skip over all the articles that relate to snowboardless resorts and take me to the next thread. The next button, this news group, will take me back to the list of all the articles in the current news group. The next button, subscribe to news groups, will take me back to my list of subscribed news groups. The last two buttons allow me to post replies to the article that I'm seeing. This first button, post reply, does the exact same thing as the post reply button at the top of the news group article list. It will bring up this box and reminds me of which news group I'm posting to. It will automatically set up the subject to relate to the current article that I'm reading, but I can also type in here and change that if I want to. And then I type the body of my message here in this window. Again, this will post to this news group. Potentially millions of people may read this. So be very careful and very sure that you want to send this before you click on the send button. I'm going to cancel it now. Mail and post reply will both send an electronic mail message to the author as well as post to the news group. This way, the author will get my reply directly in his or her electronic mailbox, and the whole news group will see my response. If I want to send a message just to the author, I simply click on the highlighted area next to the From tag, and that will set up electronic mail just to go to this person. So you can see the post news group field is blank, and now the reply is simply going to the author of the group. This is actually a better idea than posting to the whole news group unless you're absolutely positive that everyone reading the news group is going to be interested in your reply. Now I'll return back to my subscribed news groups and select View All News Groups. We talked about some of the hierarchies of news groups, such as Comp for computational related issues, Rec for recreational issues, etc. You'll notice that many of the groups relate only to regions For instance, here, tx.jobs is a news group related to job offerings in Texas. Up here at the top, you see BA with an asterisk, and remember that that relates to an entire hierarchy of separate news groups. All of these news groups are related to the Bay Area in California. Your provider may carry news groups that are related to your particular region, or they may carry news groups related to many different regions in the US and in Europe. Finally, there's another hierarchy I'd like to point out to you, and that's the clarinet hierarchy here. I mentioned earlier that saying news or news groups is actually something of a misnomer because there's not really actual news in most of the news groups. It's mostly discussions. But in the clarinet hierarchy, we do have actual news. The clarinet hierarchy contains news feeds from Reuters and other newswire agencies. You can't post to them, but you can read them. There are comics from syndicated newspapers, editorials, regional news, information about current events, and sports. The clarinet news groups are actually a subscription for pay service, and you'll only get it if your internet service provider is paying the subscription fee. It's not something that you normally pay for, but your internet service provider will carry the clarinet news groups for all their customers. There are also many specialty news groups. There's a whole hierarchy of news groups dedicated to images. You can find clip art, color photos, all sorts of pictures that you can use on your own personal computer. You'll also find news groups dedicated to application programs. You'll be able to download programs for your PC, such as utilities, fonts, and even games. As you can see, Usenet has a lot of benefits and open up thousands of possibilities for joining electronic communities. You can meet people, discuss important issues of the day, ask questions, and share ideas and opinions. Now that you know how to send and receive electronic mail and participate in Usenet discussions, let me give you a few suggestions for communicating effectively in this new medium. As I mentioned in the beginning of this series, the internet isn't owned or run by anybody, but there are certain rules and conventions that we all should follow. First of all, be conservative in what you send and forgiving of what you receive. Electronic communication is a much flatter medium than communicating with someone person to person. You can't depend on nonverbal clues like body language and tone of voice, so subtleties such as sarcasm are lost. There is a convention, however, for conveying humor. If you make a joke in an electronic mail message or a news group posting, you should include what's called a smiley. You can create a smiley by typing a colon, a dash, and a closed parenthesis. Now, tilt your head to the left. See the smiley face? Second, remember that even in private email communications, there's no guarantee that your messages won't be intercepted. There are many millions of people connected to the internet, and some of them may try to read other people's email. If privacy is an important issue for you, there are tools available for enhancing the security of your electronic communications. A very good one that's popular is called PGP, for Pretty Good Privacy. You can find out more information about PGP in the news group alt.security.pgp. Otherwise, for sensitive information, you should use a different medium. Unsolicited commercial mailings to people's private email addresses and postings of advertising to most Usenet groups aren't tolerated. You can damage your reputation or your company's reputation this way, and you may even jeopardize your internet access. For online marketing and advertising, the World Wide Web is the appropriate medium, not Usenet. And don't forget, anything you send or post could be read potentially by millions of people. Some of them could be a future employer, landlord, or even spouse. Everything you send out has your name and email address on it. and it's probably being archived somewhere, possibly forever. So just to recap, when you're using email and news groups, be conservative. Remember that your privacy isn't guaranteed. Advertising isn't tolerated. And be courteous and professional, because you never know who might be reading what you send or post. By now, you've probably realized that there's a lot to the internet, and now you know enough to begin exploring it on your own. It's exciting because it's endless. Even the internet itself is evolving, and now you're a part of it. Each time you venture out onto the net, you can travel the world, learn interesting information, and meet new people. Every day, new sites appear, and new people hook in. Have fun. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you on the internet.